mixer, engineer, producer. I do a lot of rock music, some pop, some country stuff. Kind of do a little bit of everything these days.
Fantastic. Whereabouts are you based?
I'm based in LA, originally from Canada, but been in LA for 15, 16 years now, so this has been home for a long time.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me about Dolby Atmos and your experience with music.
Dolby Atmos for me is pretty exciting. The music that I make is very dense. There's lots of layers. There's lots of different sounds, lots of different full frequencies going on at the same time. So for a guy like me mixing that music, the challenge is fitting it all out of like traditionally a stereo mix, which is obviously left and right. And getting that to work, you make a lot of compromises and a lot of sacrifices in order to actually hear all the things that you produced. Atmos, for me, lets me have basically the sandbox is, 100 times as big. And it gives me options. So instead of having to filter things down in order to make them fit coming out of the front speakers, instead of filtering it down and making that sound not maybe quite as full frequency or the way that it was intended to be, simply to fit it in a mix, now I can just move it to a different spot within the mix. And some of the first mixes that I did, I brought in some tracks from some of the rock bands that I do a lot of work with, and songs that I mixed for their albums. And I literally started with 0 EQ on a mix. I know in the mix that came out on the album had a lot of EQ on it to make it fit. And I didn't do any EQ. I just used panning within the Atmos environment. And it sounded so, like, it was night and day. I was switching back and forth between the album mix. And the album mix sounded good. I mean, obviously it wouldn't have ended up on the album if it didn't, hopefully. But then when I would switch to the Atmos mix with 0 EQ, it was like a different world. So for me, like being able to translate my productions and songs that I'm mixing, being able to actually translate all of the layers and all of the frequencies in a way that's not limiting, and being able to move around and spread them within that is, I mean, it's kind of a dream come true for a guy like me.
Kind of breathed on its own, right?
Absolutely, yeah, it's pretty incredible. And I mean, it's just the beginning. I mean, we're starting to figure out like kind of what translates the best and where, how to do certain things and not getting too distracting, but still keeping stuff really exciting. And I mean, the possibilities are pretty much endless. It's pretty cool.
So do you approach it kind of from still a front-facing environment, or tell me about some of the things you might have played with?
Well, I started with bands in front on a stage, which I think is kind of, put ambience behind and stuff like that. And that totally works. But it's when I started saying, okay, well, instead of leaving those, the guitar players might be here on a stage. Well, let's put those guitars in the back. And, instead of the drummer being in front of me, like what if the drummer was actually kind of in the middle of my listening experience and the band was around me? So I tried everything from watching, like almost like looking at a band playing on a stage, to now I'm the drummer and the band's around me, to the drummer's in front of me, the guitar player's over here, I'm the singer in the middle, the guitar player's over here. I mean, it's literally that you can do whatever you want. So I think I wasn't doing any mixing to picture, which I think frees things up a lot. But the other thing that's cool is if you are doing it to picture, now instead of just having a camera out front showing the band, I mean, you can have a camera on stage looking around, and you can have that feeling that you are actually on the stage instead of looking at the stage. I mean, it's the possibilities are endless. It's pretty cool.
So, how have you seen the industry change over the last couple of years? I mean, anything of note?
Where do I start? I mean, from a technical standpoint, my particular tool set has changed a lot. Let's say over the last 5 or 10 years. I mean, 10 years ago, you'd still find me in studios with lots of outboard gear, big consoles, big monitoring systems. And, there have been albums that I've worked on that literally it's been, a laptop set up in a living room in a house that we rented in Maui, and everybody's on headphones, and we've got a couple mics, and we've got everything in a computer to do really great sounding productions, and then take that to wherever we want to go and work. So the technology has obviously changed to really let us do kind of whatever we want, wherever we want, which is really cool. I'm really interested to see kind of where Atmos goes with that concept as well. I know that everybody's excited to kind of like, how do we experience Atmos in the different environments other than just like the kind of the theater environment, which is exciting for me. But yeah, the technology, the digital, the plugins, the monitoring systems. I know a lot of guys who have access to really big monitoring systems that are mixing on headphones. And 10 years ago, people wouldn't have done that. And now people, like big name mixers, so you hear their stuff all over the radio on headphones. It's crazy. So that's really exciting too, being able to, actually be able to do that quality of work in smaller, more accessible setups.
Yeah, so with Dolby Atmos, it's scalable obviously down to your headphones. So have you experimented with those tools at all yet? Or
not yet. That's kind of like next on the. I'm trying to like really flush out the big whole. I really want to that's really exciting to me right now is really using like as many speakers as I can. But the next thing on my radar is kind of like, okay, now bringing this into a smaller studio. Like my studio is not that big. But I do want to get it outfitted with at least the smaller range Atmos system, and then, like you said, also go to headphones, which I'm excited about. Yeah.
So are you predominantly Pro Tools based, or are you using other DAWs as well?
I'm predominantly Pro Tools. Yeah. Yeah.
And the artists that you're working with, do you find yourself writing a lot in the studio and experimenting things, or are you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the productions that I'm working on these days, a lot of it is built in the studio. A lot of the artists have their own studios now, and like I mentioned, I mean, what you need for a studio is so different than it was, 15, 20 years ago, where I would say I'm in rented houses in a location just as much as I'm in a commercial recording studio. And that enables us to, instead of being like having the whole album written and then having to go record it in 2 weeks, we'll spend 3-4 months on an album, writing it in the studio, experimenting with sounds, playing around with parts and stuff like that, which is obviously very fun. So
you mentioned earlier there's much more space in the mix, and how you realize that the things that you were recording and capturing in the studio environment is now actually being able to be used and translate. So what are some of the things that you might have heard in the mixes that you really missed?
Well, one of the things that I really like is like when you're miking up a drum kit. I like to use a lot of room mics, a lot of ambience mics, and sometimes you can't actually turn them up that loud because it takes up a lot of space. Well, now when I'm tracking drums, knowing that it might be mixed on Atmos, I'm putting sets I'm setting up the microphones in a way that I know ahead of the time how I might pan them, and I'm knowing like, let's say I'm using room mics that have a brighter EQ sound to them. I might put those in a certain location in the room, knowing where I'm going to pan them eventually with an Atmos mix. Knowing that ahead of the time, it's almost changing the way we're producing slightly. We know, as opposed to saying, oh well, this is going to be layered on top of this, so we can't do full frequency or we can't do a lot of ambience. Now we can. Now we can track additional room mics, knowing that we can pan them and not have to use, let's say, artificial reverbs or whatever. So it's cool knowing that we're going to have the space. It's changing the way how we're recording stuff a little bit as well, which is fun. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Of course.
And I look forward to hearing what you do in the future with Atmos.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Thanks for making all this awesome technology for us to play with. It's awesome.